everybody, it's Romania Black, and we are on episode 4 of Buddy Daddies. And oh my gosh, last episode, Rei won my heart. Kazuki realized that Miri's mom is not cut out to be a mom in the conditions that she's living in. Not that Kazuki and Rei are in any better of a boat, but also the fact that Miri's mother doesn't want her, and maybe never wanted her. So there was a lot of some hard subject matter last episode, especially in dealing with family and parents. We got insight into Rei's backstory with his upbringing and the fact that he didn't have a very strong father figure in his life. And so now he's making up for it with Miri, and my heart just, Papa Rei and Papa Kazuki, I'm here for it. I'm here for Miri just being here with her two dads and them sleeping all in the same bed together at the end. Mwah, chef's kiss. Chef's kiss, my friends. So yeah, so basically, in terms of the 3-act structure, sometimes Japanese literature uses a 4-act structure. I'm an English teacher in the US, so I always do like a 3-act structure, especially if you have seasons of anime that are 11 to 13 episodes. They usually nicely fit within that structure. So the way that it works typically in a 12-episode 3-act structure for a season is you'll have the first 4 episodes will set up your characters and set up your primary conflict, right? Then your second 4 episode sets, 4 to 5, if you have like a 13 episode set, will dive into that conflict, and the last set will deal with resolving that conflict and possibly setting up for the next season if it's a long ongoing series, right? So even though like series like My Hero Academia or Chainsaw Man or Jujutsu Kaisen that have or will have multiple sets of seasons, you can still use the same structure because basically it's the structure of an arc. It's either the structure of a series as a whole or an arc of a series. So we've pretty much been introduced to Rei with his family. We know about Miri and her family. We know about the conflict that Miri is being raised by these 2 hitmen. We've gotten a little bit of Kazuki, but I do think there could be more. I think we're still missing some bits of information about Kazuki. Now the question is, will we get to them in this episode? Or is the creator going to leave it for later and that be the surprise later on about his wife and all that? Because we've gotten enough to fill in the blanks. The question is, will we get more as to what led up to that moment? Because she basically exploded in the last episode, and we assume with the child as well. So I don't know, but I am here for these 2 men, these bakas, trying to raise Miri. Now the question is, they've decided to keep her. You've also established that she's not good for business, and you don't want Kyu-chan getting onto y'all, so what are we gonna do? And that's what I'm excited to find out. So I hope y'all are excited, but this has become something I look forward to every week. I just can't get enough of these 2 boobs as they try to raise a girl while also being hitman. It's just such a fun and clever concept, right? But we're not gonna waste any more time. We're gonna dive right in and see what happens. And so we're gonna start episode 4 of Buddy Daddies, and we're gonna do that here in 3, 2, 1, and let's do this. Oh, this was adorable. So we basically, if we're doing a 3-act structure, we did everything that we were supposed to do. We have set up Rei, we've set up Kazuki, we've set up enough with their backstory so far. We've set up Miss Anna, who is the leader of the daycare. I love her. Her character is so good in this. And then we've set up basically the situation where Miri now has a daycare. We've gotten her acquainted and well adjusted there. So now that we have this first act, everything's set up. Now the conflict being set up with Kyu-chan is the fact that they don't have employment and that they're trying to convince Kyu to let them back and have more hitman jobs, which now they seemingly don't have any problems, but they still got to pick her up from daycare. And Kyu knows what's going on. He knows. He understands what the deal is, and you could just tell there's such wariness in his eyes, like you guys are riding a very dangerous line where he's like, I don't know if I want to give you work, because he's like, I don't know if you need to handle it with this child, but they don't really have any other employment, so what are they going to do, right? Although, that begs the question of, could they find employment somewhere else? We always do this. I feel like Spy Family looms in the background with this series sometimes because they've come out in such close proximity to them, and they're not really the same. There are a few elements of this episode that kind of relates to Spy Family a little bit. And again, I don't want to spoil Spy Family if you've not seen it, But there is one aspect is the idea that Lloyd, the main character in that series, who I feel is close to Kazuki, debates on at some point, what would you do after, your spy career is over? Like, and Lloyd kind of has a backup in that series. Like, he has a profession he could do if he wasn't a spy. With Kazuki and Rei, that is a big question. Like, is this series going to keep them as hitmen, or since they have a kid to raise, are they going to try to find other employment and eventually give that up? I don't know. How do we balance that? So what other profession could they do? Right? That's a big question. And so, Kazuki seems a guy of many talents. Like, he could, work at a restaurant. He could be a chef. He could do many things. Rei seems, I don't know what Rei would do. That's a really good question if he wasn't a hitman. So lots of questions of that. The other thing was, and I might as well just go ahead and say it, the shopping trip they take where Kazuki's like, we got to dress to impress, reminded me a little bit of Spy Family and them spending all the money and then finding the discount stores. Them finding the discount store where everything was 398 yen, which I want to know of yen to dollar ratio. How much is 398 yen? I gotta know, because everything was like the same price. Oh, it's $3, basically. It's $3. Like, everything's $3. Fun. So that reminded me a lot of Bungo Stray Dogs. There's a character named Fitzgerald in that series, and he discovers and he's Fitzgerald from The Great Gatsby, so he's used to everything being posh and rich, but he finds like a bargain store and he's like, look, there's 3 pots for the price of 1. And so he's all excited about it. That's what this episode reminded me of, is that they're so excited to find a bargain bin. But we do actually get quite a bit of info in this episode, despite it being freaking cute. Now, one thing I do love about this series is that they portray Miri very, very much like a 4-year-old. Like, she is very true to her age, and the things that she asks for are very much what a 4-year-old would. You could probably argue that she's like really hyperactive for her age, but if you've ever been around a 4-year-old, that's pretty normal, right? Pretty normal. I love that they have her helping with the detergent until she like overdoes it, and he's like, oh, look, you did a great job. And then it just all runs out. It's like, what'd you expect, right? So funny. And then I love her watching Rei run is so interesting, because she's so enamored. But our boy Rei has had some damage. He has 2 bullet wounds. He has scars all over his body. I'm like, he's running to stay in shape, but like, he very much has been in battle, right? But also, I'm like, dude, you're running in jeans. You can't afford a tracksuit, like, or shorts or anything. And she's like, I don't want to get up there and do it. Like Rei seems very conscious about it keeping in shape, right? And he's like, hey. And then she like cranks up the speed, and he's like, ah. he's like, hey, stop it. And then it gets too fast for him. It's great. And she just laughs at him and then says, I'm sorry. So we get around the house. The dynamics and roles that both Rei and Kazuki take. Like, Rei is obsessed with like video games, but he also wants to keep himself physically fit because he's got a job as a hitman. Kazuki does like the laundry, he does the cooking, he does like some of the more domestic chores around the house, and is, prides himself in the fact that he can cook. And then Rei also keeps like a garden, like all the chores and stuff. Like, she basically, gets the clothes caught in the vacuum. And then Rei tries to like water his garden, and she knocks like half of it over. And him just dropping the pot, we don't even see his reaction. And her saying sorry, it's so sweet, because she's not meaning any harm by it. And it's hard to be mad at her because she says she's sorry, and they're just like, we need to find a place to take her. And then she's like, Papa, and like waving at them. And they both look absolutely exhausted. Yeah. Parenting was not what they thought it was signing up, right? So they pass this OP. I love that they go to Google, and because they see the daycare bus, and they try to call and find a daycare to take her to it. I love that Rei is also very like passive aggressive, like kind of snide with her. He's like, oh, he's like, oh wow, is it? And Kazuki's like, quit ruining my story with her. And so the thing about them applying for the daycare is such an interesting thing to bring up in a series like this, right? Because it's not like, not like an academy or anything like that. It's literally just a daycare. I didn't really realize this myself because I don't have children, but I have friends that do have children. I didn't realize the process to find a daycare and how strenuous it is. I have friends that have children that are like daycare, that are basically Miri's age, and they're like, yeah, we have to fill out all this documentation, get on a waiting list. They've only got so many spaces they can legally have kids at. We've got to be interviewed. It's like a process to get a spot there. My dummy self was like Kazuki and Rei, thinking, oh, well, we'll just pick a place and strolling up and be like, oh, will you take our child? And no, it's a big old process. At least in the US it is. And so it's interesting to see that in Japan, it's the same thing. Like, it's not easy to you don't just walk in and drop your kid off. They have to go to the government office and enroll her. And for them, what's interesting is that they have to forge a lot of stuff because they don't have like their tax returns, their income, their hitmen. They don't have a steady stream of income from one specific location. I guess they do from Kyiv, but it's kind of different, right? I love, though, that Miri is instantly on board with going to the daycare. Like, as soon as she has her bag packed, ready to go. That's like a little kid doesn't understand things taking time. And so she doesn't get that it's not a process that can just instantly happen. And then going to the government office, I love that there's like a mascot there at the doorway. They go upstairs. The guy in the blue coat kind of looked like Rei for a second, but they take like number 142. I instantly thought of Beetlejuice. I thought that maybe Kazuki would try to do like a Beetlejuice move from the movie and like take someone else's number, but no, they sit there. I love that Miri like crawls over Rei like a chameleon, where she like looks at his phone and sees what's there, and Rei doesn't even feel bothered by it. Rei plays his games, and then they both sleep together. Rei and Miri, the thing about it is, Kazuki, I mean, Miri's a daddy's girl. Obviously, she has two to choose from. But I feel like Miri is much closer to Rei in some regards. Like in this scene where she's like hanging all around him. I feel like Miri knows she can be kind of like all over Rei and he doesn't care. But then Kazuki's the one that picks her up from the daycare. So it's cute that she has this dynamic with both of her dads. Like, it's cute that she has a different dynamic with each of them, but she loves them both, right? And then he's like, the guy there's like, we need proof of employment, something that states your position with the company stamp, like all of this stuff. And I love the sound that Kazuki makes, where he's like, this is not going to be easy. We just want to put her in a daycare. What is this? And then they go home and he's just so frustrated about all the paperwork. And he's like, a freaking hitman can't provide gainful income or a household income. And then Rei's like, well, can't we just bribe somebody? Like, Rei's like, can't we just do this? I like that Kazuki's the one that gets freaked out by all of this. Rei's so nonchalant, which is kind of funny because usually Kazuki's the one that's like, we got this, we're good to go. It's fun to see their dynamics parenting and how they handle things. Again, like a couple would, that you have the one parent that like freaks out and is like, got to get all this stuff in order, and the other parent's like, well, it'll happen, what will be will be. I feel like it's cool that Rei is the calm one in this scenario and Kazuki's kind of the one freaking out. It's a great dynamic between the two of them. And then Miri headbutting him. I love that sound effect when he gets headbutt. She's like, you said I was going to daycare. And Rei just sliding in the subtle little jab. He's like, man, you really make women cry a lot, huh? I'm like, oh, I love it. I love that Rei's like, so how is that going, Lady Killer? And Kazuki's like, he's like, I cook up some forgeries. I feel like the two of them need to realize what they can and can't say in front of Miri, because Miri's like a little parrot. And God, that first daycare they go to where she says all the things about guns and forgeries and bad business, I'm like, I hope they didn't go try to tell the authorities about them. But here's the thing about this episode that is rather interesting, right? That's rather interesting is that there is a lot of judgment that happens between Rei and Kazuki. And that's kind of what I like about this series, is how they handle this same-sex couple taking care of Miri, because the guy looks over the forged documents and the way he just looks at them, he kind of just gives them a look. And of course, Miri and Kazuki have the same look on their face, and Rei's just looking off to the side like, I didn't ask to be here. And the guy just is like, okay. Like, you can sense there's the judgment there, right? But we do get some things here. That Kurusu Kazuki, date of birth, May 16th, 1994. So he's 29. So he's a Taurus. Kazuki's a Taurus. Okay, cool. And then we have Unasaki Miri, who was born on November 8th. So she is Sagittarius, maybe? No, she's not. Maybe she's a Libra. Interesting. But yeah, she's needed level of care. Date of birth 2020 or 2000. Okay, it said 2023. Oh, that's January. So this is taking place right now. Okay, so it's taking place in the current timeline, and she's 2018. Okay, I was really hoping that we would get stuff on Rei, but we know Kazuki's a Taurus, and that we know he's a Taurus, and that he is 29 years old. Interesting, if he's telling the truth about that. And she's just sitting there shouting daycare. That's fun. And I like that Rei wanted to go off to the park to hang out. I love him getting drug away, being like, no, don't take me with you. Like, Rei getting more and more expressive as these episodes go on is an absolute joy. I love that he gets more and more into it, and he's getting more and more emotional. It's great. And, I mean, Kazuki being like, you're my partner. Come on. Love. Absolutely. Now, obviously, I ship them like the Dickens, but there's nothing romantic between them right now. But it's like a bond, right? It's deep. So yeah, we have the Yumaboshi daycare where things go absolutely horribly wrong. And so this woman judges them instantly, which granted, I would hope she's judging the way Rei is sitting in that chair, because it's absolutely ridiculous and no human being needs to sit in a chair like that. No. And she says, we're your first choice of daycare, huh? She says, and you're both fathers? And then they both kind of go, yes. Like, I guess we are. Like they turn away. But I like that as they turn away, Rei looks back at him like, we are, right? And then she says, they're both my papas. And the woman's like, oh, really? Like, the woman's very judgmental from the Yumaboshi. And she says, Papa Kazuki's good at cooking. And he did forgeries to get me into daycare. Like, and Kazuki's like, oh, God, no, shut up. He's like, oh, no, it's fine. And then she says, Papa Rei is good at firing a gun. And she's like, oh, toy guns. I like that at first, Kazuki covers. And he's like, oh, it's for a game. She's like, oh, toy guns. And she said, no, they said it was a real gun. And that they do bad business, but that's grown-up talk, and I shouldn't mind. I love that Rei is just like, we're doomed. Rei doesn't even look that way because he knows they're not going to make it. He's like, they know this is a lost cause instantly. And she says, right, Papa? Like, don't get mad at me, right? And he's like, excuse us. And then they never come back. And so he tells her just to leave it to them. So then they go to the Aozora, which is where they end up at, right? I just can't get over Kazuki's like look. He talks about making a first impression, but he looks like Fagin off of Oliver and Company with them dang boots and that oversized trench coat. At least, Rei looks like he looks like a tech guy, but he's really rich. And he tells her to do like they practiced. And I like that as they go in, the joke isn't even set up. Rei just walks away, and you can tell that Kazuki was like, no, you're coming with us. And he's sitting there like, I don't want to be here for this interview. I almost wonder if Rei feels like he's messing up the interview because they're both guys, but that doesn't come out in this. And then Anna, she looks instantly non-judgmental. I love her. Which, granted, when Miri and Kazuki sit next to each other with the same expression, they kind of look like father and daughter, right? And she's like, oh, tell me your name and how old you are. I like this old man that looks like Mr. Rogers next to her. Unasaka Miri, right? And he says, I'm Kurusu Kazuki. And I was wondering if they were going to bring up that they have different last names. I was wondering if it was going to get brought up. I mean, I guess the long and short of it is Kazuki could be like, well, she has her mother's last name, but we're no longer together. I'm assuming that would be the easiest way to explain it. Be like, oh, she has her mom's last name, but she's not in the picture anymore. And it's that. I wonder if he will adopt her by the end of the season. I don't know. And then she said, and I love that he says his name, and Anna's like, oh, I was just asking her. And Ray's face where he's like, Rei is like so like just enjoying every moment of that, of Kazuki getting called out. It's wonderful. And Anna says, oh, 2 fathers, you say. And he's like, oh, well, there's a story behind that, you see. And she's like, okay. And she says, but you all have different last names. And he's like, there's a story behind that, you see. And what I like is that Anna, she asks Miri, she says, Miri-chan, are you happy to have 2 papas? Like, are you happy with your parents? And she's like, yes. Like, she answers so sincerely. She's like, they're together all the time and they're friends. So the way she describes it doesn't make them a couple necessarily, but they're friends that are always together and raising her together. Like 3 men and a baby style, right? And she says, it sounds like you love them a lot. And she says, and they don't do any bad business. Like, she's like, just so you know, they're legit. I love that Anna's like, oh, okay. I love that Ray's like, we're doomed, but it actually works out fine. City cleaners, he says they are. I love that she's like, oh, what do you do? Are you very busy? And Rei kind of pipes up snarkily. He's just like, well, we don't really have a lot of business at the moment. He's like, we're kind of underemployed at the moment, which is funny. He's like, shh. And then she just says, well, it must be, hard for you to both raise, to work while raising a child. And the old man's like, we'll do your best to help. Like, these people are so sweet. Like, Anna and this old Mr. Rogers sensei, they're like totally legit. I love them. And he's like, so we're in. She's like, you can start attending. And I freaking love that as she's spinning around, and you can tell, like, before Kazuki even raises his hand, Rei's like, let's high-five it. Like, just her high-fiving them both. Absolutely wonderful. I love it. I love it so much. So, yeah. And then, in true Masato fashion from Neon Genesis, gotta celebrate with some beers. Our daughter got into daycare. Like Kazuki with his beer, very Masato-like, one problem solved. And, well, I guess Rei is sharing one as well. And so their paperwork got accepted. And then they figure out all that she needs to be at the daycare. And he's like, an apron, a hat, a change of clothes, a slippers, a hand towel, a nap mat. Like they're going through the list of everything she needs while she's there. Like the cup, the toothbrush, and everything has to have her name on it. And so then they go shopping. He's like, well, we could probably pick all of this up at a department store. I like that they talk about the 2 different class systems that Kazuki and Rei have been dealing with. Rei, we established, is a rich boy. His dad has he's always had the finest things. Kazuki seems like he's like the street rat. He's our Aladdin that has come up from the bottom and has the money from his hitman job. And he talks about having to establish dominance and a good impression. And Rei's like, really? And he's like, a rich kid like you wouldn't know what that's like. It's like the common people form hierarchies based on the quality of your clothes and gear. So he's like, I always got a raw deal there, so I learned the hard way. So it's funny that we have the 2 situations here, because you have Kazuki, who feels like he always got the shaft when he was a kid because he didn't have the finer things. But in this case with Miri, the other kids around her don't have the finer things. So she's actually the one that stands out and gets the shaft for the opposite reason. So it's like a nice little lesson learned, like reading the situation and the environment, because Kazuki assumes that the only way is by establishing dominance through your wealth and your status, and that's not how the daycare functions. I mean, it just seems like a separation of worlds, and they kind of just figure that out throughout this episode by the end of it. But yeah, and they get the suits. Oh my God, the suits. How ridiculous. And then they realize that they've got to put her name on every single item of hers. It's great. And then they get started, and poor Kazuki, they're like, yeah, we have to sew a tag in on it. And Kazuki's like, I can't sew. I don't have a sewing kit. And so he gets, I like that Kazuki, he gets all worked up about it. He's like, what kind of loop? A loop of freaking loop? He's like, I can't do this. And he just gives up. He's like, I'm not going to do it. And Rei says, well, doesn't she need to establish dominance? I love that Rei is that parent that's just like, But you said, I mean, I guess she doesn't have to. Like, such a passive-aggressive form of getting Kazuki to do it, right? I freaking love it. He's like, I'm gonna go buy a sewing kit. He's like, have fun. And then I like that poor Kazuki's like trying to sew in his fingers. Kazuki's hands are my hands. If I try to sew, it's just not, doesn't work out. And then I love that Rei took the initiative to do the names on all the blankets. And then he gives her a marker. Rei is a spoiler, right? Because here's the thing. He was starting to write the names on her clothing before Kazuki got home. So Rei was taking the initiative to do it, right? And not only that, but he spoils Miri a bit. He gives her the marker to let her write on her dress and everything, right? And he already has all the blankets. Like, Rei's doing it without being asked. I freaking love it, right? I love it. And so they spend all night getting stuff ready. And then they pull up in the taxi. And then, oh my God, the red suit and the white suit. It's like, it almost feels like a Dumb and Dumber moment. It feels like they show up like Dumb and Dumber with the suits. He has like the ascot and she's like all dressed up. Like, they would be ready for Eden Academy, but not for this place. And so then, like, there's the moms here. The mom's like, oh, I tried to mix green peppers into the hamburger steak. Look at that. And then they see the two guys and they're like, oh, wait, what? Excuse me? And then I like that Anna's like, oh, good morning. Like, she's so non-judgmental. I love her. And, like, everybody's staring. And he's like, oh, thanks for having her. And they're like, oh, Miss Anna, are they? And they're like, oh, yeah, Miri-chan. She's joining the giraffe class today. And these are her papas. And I like that Kazuki still thinks he's going to, like, impress the ladies. Being like, haha. And I'm like, you are with the papas. You're with Rei. Like who you going to finagle while you're being a dad with a dad? And they instantly go to their phones. And so we have Sumugi's mama. Thank you. See you again. 2 hot papas in giraffe class. Says, see you again. Oh, says, oh, dying to know more. Those clothes look expensive. Do you think they're rich? Oh my God. Like, they're just gossiping about them. She's like, oh, you guys look like mobsters. And then Rei's like, well, we are hitmen. And then Kazuki's like, nope. And then they say, hitmen? Oh my God. The one lady said, I'd take a hit from that. They could do a hit on my husband too. I want in on that action. Oh my God. These moms are thirsty. Thirsty for our papas. No. Oh my God. Oh my God. They could do a hit on my husband. Oh my God. These mamas are thirsting for Kazuki and Rei. Not good, Cotton. Oh my God. That's absolutely hilarious. Oh no. So yeah. So I like that she tells him about the card that lets for the attendance and shows them where they put all their stuff and like their towel, everything. And Kazuki's worried about remembering everything. And she's like, oh, you should write her temperature and the day's events in your notebook every day. I'm wondering if the temperature is like a COVID-related thing when she comes there. Wonder if that's something since this takes place in 2023. And she goes, oh, thank you so much. And then she says, she looks at the diary entry and it's like February 6th, starting daycare today, exhausted from staying up all night. Put her name on everything. I just want to rest. And she laughs and she's like, oh, no. You don't write your day down. You write how her day was. And she's like, oh, it's fine. She's like, we'd like you to write about your child, but there are plenty of mamas who use the book to vent too. And Kazuki's like, oh my God, are you kidding? I love Rei's like, you wrote events from your day in there? Like, I do like the fact that Rei's kind of like, are you? What are you doing? What I like about it is that when they get the bike after they go to the one store, the bike to take her there, Kazuki says it's not a mom bike, it's a papa bike. Because it would be very easy and it's very hard for me because what I want to do is say, oh, well, Kazuki's like the maternal role in this relationship by doing like the venting in the notebook, doing the cleaning and stuff. But that's ascribing a very gender societally ascribed position to Kazuki, and they're both dads, so that's not something that should happen in this case. They both can be paternal and maternal in this case, right? It's very tempting to ascribe that role to Kazuki, but I don't want to do that. So I do think it's cute that he wrote in the diary and Ray's like, did you? And he's like, shut up. I love his little shut up face to Rei. It's very cute. And then he made all the food for her and had to take it home because they eat the food here. It's great. He's like, we stayed up all night. And Kazuki's like, well, you slept. And so then I feel so bad for Miri, though, when she goes to try to make friends. Like, they get out of there and she goes to make friends, but nobody wants to play with her because of how she's dressed. They all are kind of intimidated by her. And it's really sad because, you know, if you've ever been in that situation before and you're trying to make friends, sometimes grade school kids are really hard to get along with. And if you've ever been in that situation, it's really painful if you get shunned out, right? It sucks, right? I was in that position when I was in grade school. It sucked. And so I really felt for Miri here. I was like, oh, come on, because she's so sweet, right? It's not like she's a mean kid that's a bully. She's literally pure powdered sugar in child form. And she just wants to be friends and nobody's accepting of her. And that's what's so tragic, right? And so to celebrate, Rei wants to go play video games, but Kazuki's like, no, let's go celebrate. And they go to the cafe. I do like where Rei's like, good stuff. Like, I don't condone smoking. I don't like smoking, but it is always, you know, cool to see it animated, right? And I like that they're like, well, we're just celebrating, and Q's like, quite a carefree attitude for you to have while you're unemployed. And he's like, well, Q-chan, we'll do the job right this time if you give us one more. So yeah, they haven't had a job since the one they botched. And he's like, I'll think about it. Like, that was pretty cold. Like, I don't know. Q knows what's up. He knows something's going on. I'm like, and he's like, oh, it's time to go get her. Come on, see you, Q-chan. And like, the fact that they left their drinks in the cigarette and they said, time to go get her. Q knows. And it's gonna be painful. It's gonna be painful. You just know it is. And he's like, you guys are in hot water. But this whole thing, like the montage of, at first they went and picked her up together, but then Kazuki goes and picks her up by himself. And he's like, how'd it go today? And you can just see her kind of wilt, like nobody's playing her. She's like, it's not what I thought. And then the third time he goes and picks her up, she just says it's boring. And then she goes and asks him the fourth time, and she just walks away. And so afterwards, he goes to see her in the room, and she's all by herself reading. And she just kind of, like, you just see her kind of dim, like she's not socializing with anybody. She's just kind of all by herself. And that's not Miri's, it's like her vibrant personality is just stifled. Right? And at first I was like, well, why didn't Anna or somebody say anything to him? But they did. They put it in her notebook. He just didn't read it. And I'm like, I was like, Kazuki, you got to read that stuff. And I love when Anna, she's like, what's the matter? And he's just like, how's Miri doing? And she's like, oh, well, I wrote a little bit in her notebook for you to read. Like, she doesn't seem like a pushy person. She's like, it's about her clothes. Like, they make her singled out. And Kazuki's like, oh, God, this is all my fault. And I love that he's like, I don't know where to buy that stuff. And I love how instantly, like, she doesn't judge him or scoff at him or anything. She's like, oh, good. You can go to the store that all the moms go to. And he's like, it's all the rage with the mothers. And they're like, it's just packed. And all of it's cheap as hell. And just like a kid at heart, right? Like Miri's like, look at all the toys. And Rei's like, it's paradise. Like, his blush on his face. Freaking adorable. And then I love that Rei is focused on the toys and is like, look at all this stuff. And Kazuki's like, you mean to tell me they pre-looped these towels? I didn't have to do it myself? Hilarious. I think the reason I want to ascribe those gender roles to each of them is only because, like, Kazuki is acting how my mother would act, and Rei is pitch perfect my dad. My dad would be worried about the toys in the store with me and my brother, and my mom would be like, but the things that we need. So it's funny. I see the comparisons there, but why didn't anyone tell me? And then they just get all the stuff. I love that Rei has like all the stuffed animals. He's like, this place freaking rocks. It's the cutest thing. It's so cute. They get all of the stuff. He's like, I'm going to be a member here so I can get stuff all the time. And he's like, you can buy all you like. Like, we could literally buy this store for the price of one of those suits. And she's like, this is the ones everyone else rides. And he's like, it's not a mama bike, it's a papa bike. And then they all go home with all of their stuff. I do love that even when they're out shopping, they have the red and blue scheme that are the two different colors. And I like that Rei, once they get home, that's when Rei goes, okay, we had this really great day of shopping, but we have to put our name on everything. And Kazuki's like, I know! Like, it's fantastic. But then he takes her to school and she goes out in the playground. And I like that Kazuki's like, well, maybe I'll give it a little bit of a push. And he like kicks the ball to her and gets the ball rolling. Really, really sweet. And then of course, like in Spy Family, everybody thinks Lloyd is the greatest dad, and everybody thinks Kazuki is really impressive. And he does like the Aladdin move where he like moves the ball around his shoulder like the apple that Aladdin did. Super cute. And Miri, of course, because she's so nice, she's like, let's all play together. And like gets them all to play. And then they all forget about Kazuki and start playing with her. And then Hinata and Katori, her friends. And she goes home with him. He's like, how'd you like daycare? It was so fun. And then the after credit scene, I was thinking maybe the after credit scene would be something serious, but no, instead the after credit scene is them getting her a room. And to be honest, he's like, here's your present. And it literally looks like a room that they picked out because the colors don't match. There's so many patterns. It's like all over the place. There are plants, like Rei likes to garden, so there's plants. Like it's very, very cute. And he's like, this is your room from now on. Aww. And then her hugging both of their legs. Then he's saying, thank you, Papa. And she means for both of them. And hugging them both together. Oh my God, I freaking love it. And then they both look at each other. Ah! Just melts my heart. Absolutely melts it. I cannot get enough. So that was a surprisingly insanely wholesome episode where there wasn't really anything. There was no there wasn't a lot of like bad guy fighting, no hitmen, nothing. The most we got was Q-chan maybe giving them a job. I feel like next week we're going to pick back up with that, especially now that we've established she's in the daycare. But this was all like an episode to make sure she can handle the daycare and do all that. So super adorable and precious. And more character development, all that good stuff, and setting up Anna's character. I loved it a lot. So I'm really excited to know your thoughts down below. This episode was awesome, but I have a feeling we're going to get back to business, maybe with the Hitman gig next week. So in the meantime, I hope you all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe, take care, and I'll be back very soon with episode 5 of Buddy Daddies. Bye.